Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. This week, let's talk about Sennet. This is a newly announced ritual archetype that kind of feels like if they gave advanced ritual art the MST treatment and turned it into its own whole archetype. Obviously, this time around we're not actually using the advanced ritual art, but spiritually that's kind of what we're doing. We are ritual summoning by sending normal monsters from deck to the graveyard. So let's start with our only two actual just normal summonable effect monsters, starting with Nefertari. This card, when normal or special summon, you can send it to the graveyard and then show two normal monster cards in hand, deck, field, or grave, then set that many spells straight from deck. That's kind of the general idea with the Sennets, is that you have to play at least two, I think the proper number is going to be three, normal monsters in your main deck, but you get these powerful effects like set two spells out of playing them in your main deck. And then lastly for this one, on the opponent's turn you can banish this card from your grave to equip a normal monster from your grave to a ritual monster you control as an equip spell. That's the other big thing with this archetype. We want to equip normal monsters to our rituals to enable bonus effects of theirs. The thematic is kind of that these guys are like enslaving the spirits of these old normal monsters, which is kind of a neat idea. They're all zombies. The art's really cool. They're very like spirit imbued, empowered sort of thing going on, which I think is really what drew me here. Just like, look at this guy. Look at this guy. He's cool as hell. So then our only other main deck normal summonable monster is Amenhotep, which does the same exact thing, but for traps. You set two traps by revealing two normal monster cards. Then you can banish him from the graveyard to target three normal monsters in grave and shuffle them back into the deck so you can use them again later. You don't want to shuffle everything willy-nilly because you want to have cards to equip, like with Nefertari's effect, but it's important to be able to put the gas back in the deck to keep ritual summoning. Then we're on to our actual ritual monsters. So first up is going to be Neckbet. So all of these guys can discard from hand for some amount of value. So none of them feel bad to open, really, which is kind of nice. You always look for that in a ritual archetype nowadays. You want them to have some value in hand. Neckbet's effect is that you can discard it to add a Sennet card from grave to hand. That's good because our next monster, I'll just say it right now, Wadjet, has an effect to discard two foolish Sennet cards. So these two together kind of constitute a Rhoda, and then Sphinx is just a Rhoda. You can discard to just add any Sennet card. So you've got a good bit of search power and a good bit of recursion between these guys. They also all have an effect when equipped with an equip card. Neckbets can't be destroyed by battle, Wadjet can't be destroyed by card effects, and Sphinx is completely unaffected by opponent's activated effects, while being a 5,000 attack body, so it's just a giant tower, and you just have to protect its equip spell to keep it that way, which is an interesting playstyle for sure. Then they all have an on-field effect of some kind. Neckbit has a quick effect to special summon a normal monster from spell and trap zone, equip this to it, and give it 2,500 attack. Very interesting effect, but think of it as a way to dodge targeted effects on himself. You can, if the Neckbit would be destroyed, for example, you can instead swap it out for a normal monster, and maybe that's like a Blue Eyes. That's going to be one of the best targets for this deck. Then you've got this 5,500 attack body on the field. That's kind of the idea there. But this is not the primary ritual you want to end your turn with on the field. Then we have Wadjet's other effect on the actual field, which is going to be a quick effect. Send up to 3 face-up normal monster cards you control to the graveyard. Target that many cards your opponent controls, return them to hand, then you can special summon a normal monster from your graveyard. This is actual disruption. This one is our level 8 as opposed to level 6. I guess I should specify that. Our levels are 6, 8, and 12, which kind of matters because it's going to help determine which normal monsters we play for tribute fodder. But the Wadjet is our level 8 and is actual disruption. You can send up to 3 face-up normal monster cards. That's important because the word cards means you can send them from the back row as well. So you can send your equip spells to bounce stuff, and then you can summon a normal monster. A couple of the cards in this archetype summon a normal monster from grave. The idea, I guess, being that it lets you synergize with Primite and other normal monster support, which is pretty neat. Last up is Sphinx's on-field effect, which is going to be to send a face-up normal monster card you control to the graveyard, change as many monsters your opponent controls as possible to face-down defense, then you can summon a normal from grave. This is your big disruption. It just books the entire board. He's also really hard to out because he's wholly unaffected. And even if you send his own equip, then you can use like Nefertari to equip the normal monster back to him to keep him unaffected. You can see that there's kind of this protect the towers situation going on, where you make the unaffected Sphinx and just work to keep it equipped with something. Then we're on to our spells, which are probably the most important cards in the archetype. We've got Sennet Perok, which I don't speak Egyptian, so I apologize if I'm butchering all of these. But you can add a Sennet monster from deck to hand, and then when this is in grave, if you discard a ritual monster, you can banish it to summon a non-effect fusion monster from your extra deck with less than or equal to attack to the one you discarded, and importantly, it makes that non-effect fusion monster a normal monster. And that's very important because vanilla fusions aren't normal monsters. They don't have the normal monster tag, which means that having Great Mammoth of Goldfine on field won't actually allow you to activate like a Primite Drill Beam, except when it is summoned off of Perok, because Perok makes it a normal monster. It's a very interesting effect. It actually changes the card type specifically. Then we've got our actual ritual spell, which is going to be Bersenet M. Heru, and this is a field spell. This archetype doesn't actually have a ritual spell on its own. I'm hoping it gets that in wave 2 because that turns on a lot more just support for rituals specifically. Like, you need a ritual spell for pre-prep, things like that. But for now, we're stuck with the field spell, and that's not that bad because the field spell has a soft once per turn. You can ritual summon a Sennet from hand or grave, which is very important because we're discarding all of our rituals for value, by sending normal monster cards from hand, deck, or field whose total levels equal or exceed its level. Then you can equip a normal monster from your grave to the card that you ritual summoned. That's kind of the whole game plan here. So we're going to, say, discard Sphinx to search the ritual, activate the ritual, summon the Sphinx by sending 12 stars worth of normal monsters, and equip something to the Sphinx. Now all of a sudden we've got the Karma Cannon loaded. It's a tower. We can summon back a normal monster when we use the Karma Cannon. Just everything becomes live off of that. This is an interesting one because through messing with the deck, I've found out that a lot of ritual support you think might be good isn't, because all of our monsters really need an equip spell to get their full effect, and there's not a lot of ways to equip them with the monsters. It's basically just our ritual summons themselves, or, for example, like Nefertari. But if you try to use something like Meteonis Drytron, which might feel good in theory, you don't end up with an equip spell on your monsters, which means that they are significantly weaker and kind of missing the whole point, if that makes sense. That's why I wouldn't suggest using Advanced Ritual Art in this deck, because it kind of feels right, but you don't get the equip spell. So keep that in mind when you're building Sennet. And then the second effect is just if you special summon a non-token normal monster, draw a card once per turn. That is just a nice bonus, but notably for the build I'm going to show you, keep track of the fact that while that is a hard once, the actual ritual summon is not. So any way to get multiple of Haru or any way to bounce Haru is very good because it lets you make both Wadjet and Sphinx, to a lesser extent Neckbet, but this one's not as important, I don't think. And then we've got traps that we're going to end up setting off of Amenhotep. So Sennet is another way to ritual summon. It's the only other way we have, and it's just the same exact thing. It is ritual summon from hand or grave by sending normals from anywhere and then equip a normal to it. It's just a quick effect way to do the same thing. Then, if a normal monster card would be destroyed, you can banish this from grave instead. So this is just one more way to protect the protection on your Sphinx. Think about it right now. Sphinx is equipped, you've got Nefertari in grave, and you've got Sennet in grave. That means that they have to destroy the equip spell 3 times before they can do anything to the Sphinx itself already. And then we might even have more ways to protect it. Like, for example, Sennet Thunderfall. This is a counter trap that can negate a spell or trap while you control a normal monster or Sennet ritual. I expect this to see some play in Primite builds because of that while you control a normal monster clause, but it is definitely going to be best in this deck. And then if this is in grave and the total attack of all normal monster cards you control is more than 3,000, you can banish this to set a different Sennet spell trap from deck or back from grave. That's pretty trivial to do because you're going to end up, like I said, Blue Eyes is going to be one of your best targets. That's 3,000 attack even if it is just an equip spell because that still counts as a normal monster card. And then lastly, for in archetype, we have Sennet Cataract. So this is another kind of weird, unique one. You can choose opponent's main monster zones equal to the number of normal monsters and Sennet ritual monsters you control to negate the first monster effect activated in those zones when it would resolve this turn. So what that means is that if you have... Note that it's normal monsters, not normal monster cards here, but let's say you have a Blue Eyes on field and 2 rituals. You can choose 3 zones, and the next time an opponent summons a monster to one of those zones and tries to use its effect, it is automatically negated on resolution, similar to how the Ryziel field spell works. And it works for each of those zones. It's interesting, and it's a very powerful effect, especially because you can respond to an opponent's card with Cataract to make sure you at least get 1 negate, and then if the opponent's on like a go wide big combo deck where they need all of their zones, you'll get extra negates out of that. Very interesting effect. And then lastly, if the total attack of all normal monster cards you control is more than 3,000, you can banish this from grave to send an opponent's monster to grave. Just nice extra disruption. This is a very good trap card for disruption. Now, before we get into a basic combo, I want to talk about some of the support cards you're probably going to be seeing and or using in this deck. Namely, what are good vanillas? You might think, well, the vanilla doesn't really matter what you're playing just because it's an equip spell. But it does matter because we have ways to summon them out pretty regularly. So we can use something like Blue Eyes as the biggest, like, 3,000 attack normal monster, so that we can summon it out, and maybe we're using it with Neckbet, and then it's giant. But also, keep in mind tuners. There are a few normal tuner monsters, and that gives us access to some weird synchro plays if we want to do that. Like, we've got a variety of levels. We've got 4, 6, 8, and 12. Obviously, the 12 we're not going to be synchroing with, but we could use something like Angel Trumpeter to get access to 8, 10, and 12 synchros. Same with like Dragon Core Hexer. This is an 8, so you can use it with one of the just effect monsters to go into a 12 there. So keep that in mind, that there are situations where you would want specific normal monsters. Same thing with the extra deck. Remember that Herak summons a non-effect fusion monster from the extra deck with attack less than or equal to what you discard. That means that our best targets are going to be Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon for Sphinx, because there's nothing with 5,000 attack. Blue Eyes is going to be your best at 45. But we can do Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon at 2,800 attack for the neck bet, and Black Skull Dragon at 32 for the Wadjet. So those are all going to be your highest attack targets to summon off of Perrock. And then keep in mind synergies, like Great Mammoth of Goldfine is a zombie. These are all zombies. There might be something you can do with that, hint hint wink wink. So keep in mind your vanillas do actually matter here, but let's go see the basic combo. Alright, so let's see what we can do off of just Sphinx. We're going to discard the Sphinx to add Nefertari, then we can normal summon the Nefertari and immediately tribute herself. We have to reveal 2 vanillas. Then we can set both the Sennet Perrock and the field spell. That's going to let us activate the field spell first. This is somewhat important, sequencing kind of matters. Then we're going to activate Perrock. Perrock is going to let us grab anything else in the archetype, but we don't have an extra normal summon for Amenhotep, unfortunately. So the best we can do really is grab like Wadjet, I guess, and just discard it to get extra value. That's going to let us send something. We're not really going to get to search anything else, but we can dump one of the traps just to get a disruption online. I'm not sure exactly what's going to be correct here. We can dump Thunderfall to set one of the other ones, which is kind of important to keep in mind. You can also dump Sennet as a protective measure. I'm going to do Thunderfall here. Then we're going to trigger the Sennet Perrock because we discarded a ritual monster to summon from the extra deck. This is going to be Black Skull Dragon because we did Wadjet, so that they have the same attack. This is the biggest thing you can summon out. That's going to trigger Bersenet Mheru to draw a card. Draw doesn't really matter here, but just keep that in mind. And now because we have more than 3,000 attack worth of vanilla, we can use Thunderfall's Graveyard effect to set one of our traps. The best call is probably going to be Cataract if I had to guess, just because it's at least one monster negate. Then we can finally get around to using our field spell to summon out Sphinx by tributing Angel Trumpeter and Blue Eyes here. There's a reason I choose these specific 3 when I am choosing my vanillas. It's 2 8s and a 4. That means that we can tribute summon or ritual summon the Sphinx and the Wadjet before having to shuffle anyone back into the deck. It gets us 2 ritual summons before we need to try and find a way to recycle. So that feels pretty good to me. And then this is going to be it for the one card. We've got a big guy, we've got a towers that is unaffected and can book the opponent's board, and we can negate 2 monster zones, which again is kind of odd. And then when this is engraved, after we use the negate effect, we can banish it to send an opponent's monster to the graveyard. And of course, it was a 1 card, we draw a card to get a full refund. So that's pretty good. It's a pretty solid combo. Cool? Cool. Alright, so what is a Sennet deck actually going to look like? Well, in my opinion, probably the best home for it, interestingly enough, is going to be with Pumpkin. That's because there's a lot of synergy between these two that may not be immediately apparent. And that's mostly because of the new Hublot, which we have not gotten yet, but we will in Beyond the Brave, which I think comes out before Sennet actually does, so we'll have him by then. And that's because this card, when normal or special summon, allows you to send a level 6 or higher zombie from deck to grave, then add a level 6 or higher zombie from grave to hand. So it's a roundabout rota of a high-level zombie, which, yes, can go get Sphinx, and then Sphinx is full combo for that deck. But the synergy doesn't even stop there, because we have ways in Pumpkin to reborn monsters from the grave. So we can, for example, dump Amenhotep if we normal summon Nefertari already, because Sennet kind of wants to normal summon 2 monsters but doesn't have a way to. So we normal Nefertari, foolish the Amenhotep using our ritual monster, our Wadjet, and then we can bring it back with Samuel to get both of our traps online as well. And then also, Pumpkin the Great Ghost King can bounce our own cards, which means we can bounce the field spell and use it again to summon out the Wadjet as well as the Sphinx. Lots of synergy here. It's a very cool deck. That's one of the reasons I think Great Mammoth of Goldfine is going to be one of the better targets to summon off of Perok, because it is a level 6 zombie, which means it fits perfectly in with Pumpkin. So, I think this is probably going to be one of the better homes for it. And then I just wanted to point out other things that I have figured out with the deck so far. So Ancient Secrets obviously is going to be amazing in anything with normal monsters at all. This is no exception here. Drill Beam is a possible inclusion. I also want to mention that Ancient Secrets specifically specifies if you control a normal monster card, which means it was built to work with the Sennet, pretty much, because you're going to have normal monsters in your back row, and they count as normal monster cards. Also, Ready Fusion can summon a level 6 or lower non-effect fusion, which means you can summon out Goldfine for this deck, or, maybe you're summoning Theseus as another tuner, something like that. You can also run Volcarian, which just gives you extension in zombie builds. Lots of cool, fun stuff you can do. One thing that I do want to note is Dark Necromancer. If we do get a ritual spell in a Sennet Wave 2, this card gets insane. Because if you normal or special summon Dark Necromancer, you can send a fiend or zombie ritual monster from hand or deck to grave, then add a ritual spell from deck to hand. And that's any ritual spell. So the idea with this card is it was, what the heck are they called? The Spawn archetype support. But here we can send like Sphinx and then add whatever the new ritual is once we get one. Vendread, that was what I was trying to think of. Then other generic zombie support can be good, especially if we're foolishing various things. Primite, obviously. Piercing the Darkness is kind of funny, haha, but it allows you to draw more cards off summoning normals on both turns, similar to the field spell, and then also allows you to win combat easier, which is kind of funny. So think about summoning out a Blue Eyes White Dragon with the, what was his name? The Neckbit, making it 5500 swing with Piercing the Darkness to do 5500 plus gain the opponent's attack. It's a funny haha that you could do, things like that. And so to close it off, I want to show you the one card for this deck that I'm showing you right now because I think it's pretty neat. Alright, so to close it out, we're just going to do a one card off of just Pumpkin to show you how this deck functions and why I think it's going to be one of the better ways to build Sennet. So we're going to activate Pumpkin, set the Call of the Haunted, summon out the Pumpkin. Pretty standard for any Pumpkin build. Use its effect to get Hublot out. Hublot's going to allow us to Foolish then add back. So effectively we're rotating Sphinx, but note that we haven't been able to be Drolled yet, which is pretty cool. So we're going to discard the Sphinx to add Nefertari. Then we can normal summon the Nefertari. At this point we can get Drolled and that would change our plan a little bit, but like we're fine. We can set Emheru and Perok, and then activate the Emheru so that when we summon a vanilla, we can get a card draw out of it. Activate Perok, which is going to allow us to grab another card. From here, there's two possible routes you can take. We're going to get Wadjet either way, but what you Foolish off the Wadjet kind of changes what you're doing. If you send Amenhotep, you can reborn the Amenhotep and get both traps online, or 2 traps online. That's pretty good. It might end up being better, I'm not entirely sure yet. But here I'm going to send Neckbit to extend a little bit more and show you guys a little bit more of the synergy between the decks. So by Foolishing Neckbit, we can then summon out Goldfine. That's going to trigger Emheru to draw a card. Card draw doesn't really matter there. But this is going to let us go into Pumpkin the Great Ghost King. I'm going to keep Hublot on field because he can allow us to Xyz summon on the opponent's turn, which is pretty neat. The Great Ghost King is going to add us something. I'm going to go Snakehair here because we want to get Snakehair in the graveyard so that we can reborn it later. Now here you can either add Ectoplasmic Fortification, to draw one card, or you can add the Call of the Haunted to have a second Call of the Haunted. I'm going to do that here. Then, importantly, sequencing always matters, we're going to go Mheru here to summon back the neck bit by using Blackluster Soldier, or Blue Eyes. We don't actually have this card in the TCG, which is why I'm using it here, because it's neat. Summon out the neck bit, and then we can equip it with the BLS itself. The equip doesn't really matter. Hublot triggers, we could use the Hublot here because that's what we're going to do next anyways. It's fine. But we can then go Pumpkin effect to detach one material. I guess Pumpkin's correct. Bounce both Call of the Haunted and Mheru. That's going to allow us to use the Mheru's Ritual Summon effect again, which is really neat. And we can also go Samuel with our 2 level 6 bodies. Samuel can reborn any of our zombies, so we can bring back like Pumpkin now and then Snakehair later. We can actually also detach Hublot for cost. Let's do that just so you see how it works. We're going to detach Hublot for cost, then bring back the Hublot so that we can get an extra Xyz summon on the opponent's turn. And because Samuel's a quick effect, we can also bring back like Pumpkin or Snakehair, use those effects, and then quick Xyz with the Hublot. Just lots of cool, fun lines you can do. But finally, we're going to summon the Sphinx with our 2 other vanillas. That's why I'm playing exactly these 3, because it gets you 2 summons off of it, like, before you have to worry about it. I'm not going to worry about this. We can rank up into Undying Legion, or we can use the Hublot. Like, obviously, I don't have another 6 here, so that would probably be correct. But if you just want the disruption, go Undying Legion. We can set both Call of the Haunteds, and there we go. Let's go to the opponent's turn and see what we can do. So, on the opponent's turn, we have Nefertari to equip a guy to Sphinx to keep the protection online. We can Call of the Haunted back a whole bunch of stuff. Snakehair, we could bring back the Nefertari, which lets us set follow-up, for example. Just all sorts of stuff we can do on the opponent's turn. We can also send with Undying Legion, we can book, but let's go Samuel here. I'm going to detach the neck bit, and I'm going to summon back the, I don't know, let's do Snakehair. And then on summoning Snakehair, it's going to petrify something, and then you can also trigger Hublot to make another 6. Again, I haven't figured out what the other 6 is supposed to be, but I'm sure you're supposed to play more than just the 2. So that's kind of how this deck functions, and I think this is going to be one of the better builds of Sennet, because if you look at my current build, this is like not optimized. I was just kind of playing with all of this stuff. You can get the deck below a 30-point core, or a 30-card core, which means you'll still have quite a bit of space for non-engine and things like that. So I think this build's going to be one of the better ones for Sennet. But that'll be it for this one, guys. I hope you liked it, I hope you learned something, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.